What's up, dude? Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So if you're new here, hi, my name is Carlee. I have a very big interest in true crime and I've just recently started doing true crime videos, and my videos are short and to the point, and I don't give every single minuscule tiny detail of cases because I know that not everybody likes that. So I just kind of give you what you need to know so that way you know about these cases and you have all the information that you need to know. And that's pretty much it, I guess. I got someone commenting one time saying that, like, oh, if you're not gonna, go into a case that, like, not go into every detail, you shouldn't be doing this. And I was like, well, that's essentially what news channels do. They just give you all of the big details and what you need to know, and so anyways, that was a total sidebar. I lit some candles. That one is a woodwick candle, which I do not like. I bought it. I don't like it because it's noisy, but it smells incredible. It's like caramel crunch or something. Honestly, if you guys find that candle, seriously buy it because you will love it. But I think that's kind of everything that I wanted to mention to you guys in the beginning. So let's jump into today's case, which is about the Sodder children. George Sodder was born in Tula, Sardinia, Italy in 1895 and immigrated to the US 13 years later and landed in Ellis Island, like a lot of other immigrants did around that time. He came with his older brother, who turned around and went back home as soon as they cleared customs at Ellis Island. George never talked much about why he left Italy, which honestly, I have to say, that ended up being more interesting to me than this case, which, okay, sounds horrible, but I'll just kind of explain. It's because I feel like we sort of have an answer at the end of this case. However, we don't know why he left Italy, which I thought was so interesting. So, I mean, if he was still around today, I would 1,000,000% try to dig more into that. But I kind of feel like it was a family dispute. And that's why his brother dropped him off and then was like, later, buddy. George worked on the railroads in Pennsylvania, and after a few years, he started working more permanently as a driver in Smithers, West Virginia. He started his own trucking company, and initially he hauled fill dirt to construction sites and later hauled coal mined in the region. That's actually really funny because I work for someone that owns a trucking company, so I know a lot more about dirt than I thought I would ever learn. There was a storekeeper at Smithers who had also immigrated from Italy, and he had a daughter named Jenny. She and George would later get married, and the couple settled outside of nearby Fayetteville, where a lot of Italian immigrants lived. They lived in a 2-story home about 2 miles north of town. In 1923, they had their first child. In the end, they had 10 children, which is a huge number. And in age order, starting from oldest, it goes John, Joseph, who went by Joe, Marion, George Jr., Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, Betty, Sylvia. That's a lot of kids. Sylvia was born in 1943, and around this time, George's trucking company was flourishing. He and Jenny became a very respected middle-class family in the area, but George was a confident man who spoke his mind, which did alienate some people. He was almost a little too forceful when he would talk to people and just kind of wanted his point to get across and wouldn't really listen to anybody or like other opinions. So that's kind of the kind of guy George was. But I mean, if he came to America at such a young age by himself, like, he had to learn to be confident and how to live. So kind of makes sense when you know about his past. By the time Sylvia was born in 1943, the second oldest son, Joe, who was 21 at the time, had left to serve in World War II. In October of 1945, a life insurance salesman was visiting George, and after George had said some not so nice things about the war and Mussolini, the salesman warned George that his house would go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed, which is a really weird and kind of drastic thing to say. There was another visitor who was apparently seeking work and went around to the back of the house and warned George that a pair of fuse boxes would cause a fire someday. But George had just had the house rewired when an electric stove had been installed, so that didn't make much sense, especially because the local electric company said afterwards that it was completely safe. So obviously everything was like up to code and wasn't anything to be worried about. So I kind of feel like that guy was just sort of looking to scam him out of some money maybe, and cause worry over something that did not need to be worrisome. A few weeks before Christmas, George's older sons noticed a strange car parked along the main highway through town, and the people in the car were watching the younger Sodder kids while they returned from school. The Sodder family celebrated on Christmas Eve in 1945. Marion, who was working at a dime store in town, had bought her younger sisters some new toys, and the sisters were so excited that they asked their parents if they could stay up past their bedtime. Some of the kids had to go outside and do chores, and some were already asleep, but the younger girls did get to stay up as long as their older siblings were awake as well, and then some of their older siblings had to in turn remind their younger siblings to go outside and do chores. Jenny woke up when the phone rang at 12:30 a.m. A woman was on the other end, but Jenny didn't recognize the voice, and the woman asked for a name that she didn't recognize. Jenny could hear laughing and clinking glasses in the background, like the caller was at a party, which makes sense because if it was, Christmas Eve, it's kind of what you do. Jenny ultimately told the woman that she had the wrong number and hung up and went to bed. At 1 a.m., she woke up again when she heard something hitting the roof with a loud bang and then a rolling sound, like it was rolling off the roof. She went back to sleep after that, and then about a half hour later, she woke up because she was smelling smoke. When she got up to see what was on fire, she found the room that George used as an office was on fire around the phone line and fuse box. Jenny woke George and he went to wake up the older sons. Both parents escaped the house, as well as Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr. They yelled to the kids upstairs but got no response. The stairs were already on fire, so going up just was not an option, unfortunately. When John was interviewed for the first time, he said that he went up to the attic to alert his siblings who were sleeping there, but later on he changed his story to say that he only called up the stairs but he never actually saw them. And I do feel like, maybe he was feeling guilty that he didn't see them, so he, kind of first tried to sweeten the truth a little bit, and then in the end ultimately came out with what actually happened. I'm just thinking in, a case like this, you would feel a lot of guilt, and maybe he just couldn't handle being potentially blamed for something that just was not his fault. That's just kind of my own personal guess. So trying to rescue the rest of the kids was weirdly difficult. Just some weird stuff happened. So the phone didn't work, obviously, because it was on fire. So Marion ran over to a neighbor's house and called the Fayetteville Fire Department, and a driver on the nearby road saw the fire and tried to report it from a nearby tavern, but they weren't able to reach the operator. But later it turned out the phone was broken, and it's unsure whether the passerby or the neighbor was able to finally reach the fire department. A barefooted George climbed the house's outside wall and broke open the attic window. Oh, sorry, my boy Louis, I think, wants to come in and hang out. He might just fall asleep on the rug that I just cleaned. Sweetie, I'm doing a video. You just have to wait, okay? I'm very sorry, baby. So the ladder that George and his sons were going to use to reach the attic wasn't in its normal spot, resting against the house, and couldn't be found anywhere nearby. There was a water barrel nearby that could have been used to put the fire out, but it was already frozen solid. George then thought he could use the trucks that he used in his business to get up to the attic by pulling them up next to the house and then climbing on top of them and then through the attic window. However, neither of the trucks would start, even though they started the day before. But if the water was frozen solid, maybe it was cold enough that they hadn't been started and ran a little bit and something seized. I don't know, again, just a guess. The 6 family members who were able to escape were out of options, and they just had to sit there and watch the fire consume the home and eventually collapse after 45 minutes, which is so sad. The fire department was low on manpower because of the war and was relying on individual firefighters to call each other. So because of that, they didn't respond to the fire until later that morning. One of the firefighters was actually Jenny's brother. Nothing further could be done besides shift through the rubble of the house, the fire chief, Morris, told the family that no bones had been found. However, another account claims that they did find a few bone fragments and internal organs, but chose not to tell the family. Modern fire professionals have said that their search was half-hearted at best, but either way, Morris believed that the 5 children were unaccounted for and just had died in the fire. This means that he was suggesting that the fire had gotten hot enough to burn their bodies completely. So a fire would have to be burning at about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit in order to burn a body, and yes, I did Google that, and FBI, please, I was doing research for a video. I am not looking to burn somebody's body, I swear. And a typical house fire gets to about 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, and yes, I Googled that too. But if it was burning for that long, I hate to say it, but there is a chance that they could have just gotten cremated. Morris told George not to mess with the rubble so the fire marshal's office could do a more thorough investigation. However, 4 days after, George and Jenny just couldn't stand to see the burnt house anymore, so George bulldozed 5 feet of dirt on top of it, which is like, George, if you wanted some answers, you shouldn't have messed with this, like, potential crime scene. He had intended to convert the area into a memorial garden for his deceased children, and when the local coroner showed up the next day, and after seeing what George had done, concerned an inquest the next day, which is like, you think that something illegal potentially happened, and so you want like law to look more into it, but it's just sort of a, you think something happened, you're not 1,000,000% sure. Which held that the fire was an accident caused by faulty wiring. One of the jurors was the life insurance salesman who had threatened George that his house would be burned down and his children destroyed in retaliation for his anti-Mussolini statements. The 5 kids got death certificates on December 30th. George and Jenny were grieving too hard to make it to the funeral on January 2nd, 1946, but the surviving children did manage to go, which I can't imagine having 5 of your children pass away. I can't imagine having 1 child pass away and then here you lose 5? Like, that's so sad. At one point, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny got a letter in the mail addressed to just her. It was from Kentucky but had no return address. In the envelope, there was a photo of a man in his about mid-20s with a cryptic handwritten note saying, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, little boys, A 90132 or 35. She and George said that it really did look like Louis and they hired a PI to go to Kentucky, but they never heard anything from him. So they have no idea what happened with that. The surviving family members adamantly believe that the kids have been abducted. In 1952, George and Jenny put a large billboard at the site of the fire advertising a $10,000 reward for information relating to the kids' disappearance. It was first $5,000, but then they upped it to $10,000. And the billboard stayed up until Jenny passed in 1989. George believed that his trucks had been tampered with and possibly even the phone. Some people think that the wrong number phone call was also related to the fire, but the police were able to find the woman who made the call, and she confirmed that it was in fact just a wrong number on her part. Eventually, evidence emerged pointing towards that the fire had been set intentionally. Morris had apparently confessed to a priest that he had found a heart amongst the rubble, put it in a metal box, and buried it. The priest told George all of this, who then went to confront Morris. He showed George where he buried the box and dug it back up. After having a local funeral director examine its contents, it was found that it was actually just fresh beef liver, which is super weird. Like, I don't know why he did that. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Later on, Morris admitted that the liver did not come from the fire, and he had placed it where he did in hopes that the Sodders would find it and be content with the fact that the kids had indeed passed in the fire. But, like, why did you put it in a metal box? I don't get that. Like, why would they think, oh, yeah, our kid was in a small metal box, and I don't know. I thought was really dumb. One time, George found a picture in a magazine of a group of young ballet dancers in New York City, and one of them he thought looked like his missing daughter, Betty, and he drove all the way to the girls' school and demanded to see her, but he was refused, which of course, a strange man, you can't just come and demand to see a little ballet dancer. George passed in 1968, and Jenny built a fence around her home and added room after room, which put a bigger buffer between her and the outside world, kind of like she was just building her own, like, comfort zone, like, safety net. She only ever wore black to show her mourning until she passed in 1989. After she died, her remaining children and grandchildren continued to try to find answers. The family never stopped looking for the missing kids, but ultimately got no answers and the case went cold. I am very sorry for them. I can't imagine going through anything like this, like I said, but ultimately I think that the kids did just burn in the fire, unfortunately. I don't really think that they were abducted. Obviously, I could be wrong, and if they have a feeling that someone did something, they should absolutely continue their search efforts, but I don't know. I kind of think that they're grieving super hard and they want answers and they don't want to believe that their kids have actually passed. But it is also weird that the insurance salesman was on the jury, so like, was he trying to mess with it a little bit? And I mean, he should have said, I know them. George has made remarks that I do not like and I do not agree with, and then been kicked off the jury for it to be a fair trial. So it's like, it is weird. Why did he want to stay on the jury for that? That's kind of weird. And then like the thing with the fuse box, and why did Morris do that? Like the fire chief, like why did he put beef liver in a metal box to try to cover it up? It really doesn't make a lot of sense. And they have continued their investigation, the family has, and they thought that they found answers, but it all just eventually led to nothing. So, unfortunately, that is our case for today. If you guys found it interesting, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up down below. It really helps push my videos out into the algorithm, and it really encourages me to do more videos. So, which I find true crime videos very, very interesting. So I love doing these videos. But thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to subscribe and stay safe out there, please. Like, watch behind you. Pay attention to your surroundings, okay? Don't end up in one of these videos. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.